All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of A Fresh Perspective with Jeff Charles, with your favorite conservatarian, me, and where we prefer truth over narrative and principles over politics. And I've got another very special guest for you. I've been wanting to have this guy on for a while, but before I get to that, you know what to do. You got to like this video, you got to share this, and you got to subscribe. Hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell. That way you'll be notified whenever I upload a new interview, which I do every Wednesday and Friday evening at 7 o'clock Eastern Standard. Although I have been slacking a little bit lately because of the holidays and all that stuff and all the other excuses that I typically come up with. So without further ado, I'm just going to go ahead and bring him on. Former vice presidential candidate for the Libertarian Party, founder and chair of You Are the Power, Mr. Spike Cohen. Welcome to the program, brother.
Thanks for having me on, Jeff. I'm looking forward to this.
Me too. This has been very highly anticipated by myself for a long time. So before we get into everything, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and also your organization, You Are the Power?
Sure. So I as you said, I was the vice presidential bronze medalist in 2020. I like putting it that way. It makes it sound so much better than how we actually scored. But we did come in third, and coming off of that, I realized that we have a lot of growing to do, not just in the Libertarian Party, but in the liberty movement. If we're ever going to accomplish any of our goals, and we can talk about that, I assume we're going to be talking quite a bit about that. If we're ever going to accomplish our goals, we have to start spreading the message of liberty. And you can't wait until you're running for office to do that. That has to happen long before that. And the best way we can do that is meet people where they are on things that they care about, where we have a solution to it, and hear me out, actually work with them to accomplish goals and change the narrative that not only can libertarians win and libertarian ideas win, but that when we win, they win as well. And that's why I started You Are the Power. That's what we do every single day. And this will be the first of my many shameless plugs. If you want to be a part of that, go to youarethepower.net. And I'm sure we'll get into details on what we do, but that's the long and short of what we do.
Awesome. Now, why don't you tell us a little bit about, I always like to ask libertarians specifically this question. Can you tell me a little bit about your political journey? How did you land where you are right now rather than being a Democrat or a Republican?
So I actually was a Republican. I was a neocon. I was like the worst kind of Republican. And now
a lot of libertarians were.
Yeah, a lot of us, when it's like almost like we have this like road to Damascus moment where we realize that we're failures as neocons, and now we joined the liberty movement. So my excuse, though, was I was a kid and I didn't have the benefit of perspective. So when 9/11 happened, I was 19. And I had always kind of been, I think, libertarian leaning. I didn't think the government should be telling us what kind of guns we should be able to have or what we should be able to put in our bodies, or, consenting relationships between consenting adults and things like that. But anything like foreign policy or tax policy or healthcare or whatever, I probably didn't have much of an opinion one way or another. And then when 9/11 happened, I was scared and horrified and angry, and just like everyone else, but I bought the government and corporate media narrative of why it happened. I bought it hook, line, and sinker. I didn't know of the long and sordid history of the military-industrial complex. I didn't know to actually find out bin Laden's own words as to why he did 9/11. I just bought the line that, he just hated us because we were so darn free, whatever that meant, and that we had to show our peaceful, free ways by toppling countries around the world and bombing and invading and killing as many people as possible, until they realized just how peaceful we were. And the thing is, looking back, it feels foolish that I believed that, but I was also a kid, and the fact that there were a lot of adults who believed it, I guess they probably should feel worse about it. But there were a lot of very annoying people like Matt Kibbe and Ron Paul and many other libertarians who talked in conservative spaces. This was back in the days of email and chat forums and stuff like that. And they made all these predictions that, the wars would fail, that we would not be welcomed as liberators, that it would come out over time, all the lies that had been told. And as, drip, drip, as each of those things came true, coming into the mid mid 2000s, I was just getting increasingly angry, and I realized I was angry because they were right and I was wrong. And so that kind of forced me to say, okay, well, I got here very ad hoc. I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about what I actually believe. And so I did a lot of reading and research. I like to say I read everything from von Mises to Marx and everything in between. And that kind of settled me on libertarianism. First as sort of a constitutionalist, paleo-conservative libertarian, and now as an anarcho-capitalist libertarian.
Okay. So let me ask you this, because this is something that I struggle with, and I still go back and forth on this. Because there's a big part of me that wants to believe in the Libertarian Party as such. I already have a lot in common with them, but I'm more of a conservative libertarian type. I identify as conservatarian. Why did you decide to go into the Libertarian Party rather than maybe introducing more libertarianism into the GOP? Because what I have noticed is that the conservative movement has gotten a lot more libertarian over time, more so than they were, like definitely more than they were before. I'm seeing a lot more libertarian ideas starting to take hold on the right and in the GOP. So what do you think about that dichotomy? I mean, I've heard it debated. I heard Dave Smith and I can't remember the other guy. They debated it on Lines for Liberty.
Oh, it's been debated many times.
I bet it still is. So what makes you lean more towards the LP?
So I will say that there are two things I want to preface before I give my personal opinion on this. Number one, You Are the Power is nonpartisan. We're a nonpartisan, nonprofit, issues-based advocacy. We have Republicans, Democrats, LP members, other third-party members, independents, people that aren't even registered to vote, that are active members and activists within You Are the Power. We work with everyone. We work with elected officials across the aisle and all of that stuff. The other thing I want to add is that whatever you personally, and I'm saying that to whoever's watching this, whatever you personally want to pursue as your way of trying to introduce liberty, whether it's through the LP, whether it's through the Republican Party, there's a couple edgy ones who are trying to do it in the Democrat Party. Godspeed to you. Whoever's trying to do it, however you feel best is, and a lot of that has to do with what your connections are, your proclivity to, what you identify with in terms of like political messaging and things like that. More power to you. I am a strong believer in fighting on all fronts. Me personally, after watching what the Republican Party did to Ron Paul, that to me said that if you had someone who was going to speak the truth at all times and give an explicitly liberty-based message, they were going to do everything they could to railroad you. And I'll push back a little on what you said about that the Republican Party has adopted libertarian ideas. I will say on some things, yes, and there are many times that libertarians and conservatives, Republicans are fellow travelers. But I'll also say that when it comes to things like free trade, when it comes to things like eliminating regulations, if anything, and on a lot of things, the Republicans have, and I'm speaking the party by and large, has in some ways gotten worse on some of these things. So I will say that it depends on the issue, but I think that the Republican Party has just become more populist over time. So if there are things that are popular with the broader, I guess, center-right movement that happens to be libertarian, then they've adopted that. But if there's something that's more popular, that's more kind of populist and nationalist, then they've adopted that. But with that said, like I said, I've gone with the LP because when I look at the platform of the Libertarian Party, it lines up with what I believe. There are maybe things here or there that I would tweak if I could, but overall, that aligns with what I believe. But I also work with anyone, and if someone decides they want to run as a Republican or try to make the Republican Party more libertarian, I have a ton of people in the Republican Liberty Caucus that I work with every day, inside and outside of You Are the Power, and more power to them. If they can make the much bigger parties more libertarian, fantastic.
Yeah, why not? I mean, and I definitely wasn't trying to say that they've gone more libertarian. The GOP goes, no, they still got a lot of issues. I mean, the neocon is still, the establishment still has a voice. It's been minimized more than it has when we were younger, because I was only about like a year or two older than you when 9/11 happened. But it's still there. So, but.
And I want to say, I will, and it will probably happen in this interview, I criticize Donald Trump all the time. There is no love lost between me and Donald Trump. But with that said, a good part of why the truly neocon part of the GOP is nowhere near what it used to be in the 2000s and the 90s. We can thank Donald Trump for that, because he almost, I wouldn't say single-handedly, but certainly was almost single-handedly, he ended both the Clinton political dynasty and the Bush political dynasty. So if nothing else, if he did nothing else, he did those things, and we should all thank him for that.
Yeah, I am very grateful that these people had to form their own group called the Lincoln Project, where they can just be losers in their own outside organization and do whatever they need to do to have their little group therapy sessions to make themselves feel better about not being relevant anymore. But yeah, I mean, but there are still some issues that, especially where I get frustrated a lot with the GOP, and I've kind of waffled between LP and GOP. I mean, especially when it comes to like the police and stuff like that. Yeah. So my political journey is still continuing. So it's just interesting to see where it's coming. But I wanted to transition to last night, because absolutely nothing happened on social media. But it
was dead. It was a dead night. Yeah, it was a dead night last night.
It was so boring. But the Twitter files, what are your thoughts on what Matt Taibbi dropped? And by the way, this is just going to be the first of several, according to him.
Yes, I mean, my first thought is I'm looking forward to what's going to drop tonight. I will say that I wasn't particularly surprised by anything that was revealed. I think it's been very obvious that you have had this weird confluence of big tech, so-called, security and trust people, not just in Twitter, but I'm sure if there were a Facebook files, it would be every bit as bad. In fact, we did have a version of Facebook files. Mark Zuckerberg straight up went on Joe Rogan and among other things said that the FBI was going to him and saying, there's some pretty dangerous stuff that you're probably going to want to filter out. So it didn't really surprise me that there's this confluence of people in big tech and the Democratic Party and various people in government. There was even some allusion to the fact that it was also that, the Trump team was sending them stuff to suppress too. I'd be interested to see what that was as well. So I wasn't particularly surprised, but it's very edifying to see it out in the open. There is no disputing it anymore. Mm-hmm. And I hope that, this is day one of 50 of Twitter files where it's like each day there's just going to be yet another thing that leaves media reeling and leaves big tech reeling, because it's what's needed. For so long, we have been told, those of us who are sick of being suppressed for misinformation and hate speech and all this other nonsense that we weren't really doing. Every time we were told that, we were told, well, it's a private company, and if you don't like it, make your own Twitter. Well, we're finding out that it wasn't largely the action of private companies. It was the action of government colluding with private companies, which last time I checked, that's what fascism is. And second of all, okay, get your own Twitter. That's what Elon just did. He bought his own Twitter.
Yeah, he bought yours.
He literally bought yours, and now here we are. So, no, I'm looking forward to it, man. I'm looking forward to, I hope it's like Chinese water torture. We're just going to have day after day of just one, scandal after the next. I'm here for it.
Me too. I'm very excited. And like you said, there was really not a lot new except for like the behind the scenes details. But what this was vindication. And this is what's going to continue to happen, because I expect there to be some surprises that come up as he continues doing this, because there's a lot that we don't know. But what it's going to do is now the left has no deniability on this. They cannot pretend that this didn't happen. They can't even pretend that it wasn't politically motivated, because if you look at the email exchanges, there were Twitter employees who were concerned about this. It wasn't just like everybody was on board with it. There were people who were like, hey, no, I don't know if this is a good idea. Can we really do this under our hacked materials policy? Should we really be having the same approach to the Hunter Biden story that we do to child porn? Probably not.
Which has been released by a reputable, member of the mainstream press news agency. We're going to suppress it because it's kind of scandalous and it's October. Like, basically, this is their October surprise, and we have to do everything we can to stop it. And let's retcon our hacked materials policy to try to do this. And by the way, shout out to Democrat Congressman Ro Khanna, who was saying this might be considered a Bill of Rights violation, especially if there's any kind of involvement with government. I mean, of all people, you got to give credit where it's due. They're sitting here citing Twitter policy, and he's saying, shh. Sure, but also the whole Bill of Rights thing as well. So I mean, it's very interesting to see where this will go. I do hope, because I'm not partisan in this, honestly. I mean, other than I'm in the LP. If there's something similar that the Trump team was fighting with people to try to try to suppress, I'd like to see that too. I wouldn't be surprised if there was something. Like I said, they alluded to that at least somewhat, that was happening, but that was just more dominant, that it was because it's primarily Democrats and Twitter's trust and security team or trust and safety team, that it was skewing towards them. I'd like to see all of it. I want to see, what is it that, there's the old saying, if you want to know who's ruling over you, find out who you're not allowed to criticize. Well, the flip of that is, if you want to know, what they don't want you to know, look at what they've been actively suppressing. I'd like to see all of it.
Yeah, me too. And I really hope that everything comes out, because you're right. I mean, it did mention Trump's campaign as well. So I really want to see, and I got mad respect for Ro Khanna. I did not expect that. He's always seemed a little bit more level-headed than some of his colleagues, but for him to actively push back and talk about the spirit of the First Amendment, and the fact that we did find out that the government's involved, and it's not just Twitter. I mean, there were multiple times earlier this year and last year where Biden was using his bully pulpit to tell Mark Zuckerberg, you need to suppress more COVID information. You're killing people. I remember that when he said that, like, people killed. Yeah. So there needs to be a reckoning on this. But here's my question. When it comes to this issue with Twitter suppressing the Hunter Biden story, which actually Facebook did too, just not to the same extent, what is the libertarian solution for that? What would be the libertarian response for solving that problem?
Get government out of tech. That's the root cause. And this is why I get concerned about people talking about getting rid of Section 230 and stuff like that. Let's be clear about something. Section 230 says that if you are publishing something, if people are using your website to publish something, you are not responsible for it. The publisher is. If you remove that or reform it, then what you end up having is a situation where now Twitter and Facebook and the rest of them have a legal liability for what you're publishing. So if you wanted anything but dog pictures and food pictures to be on Facebook or on Twitter or whatever else, you want to have something like a Section 230. The problem isn't the private actors. The problem is the government actors that are working, colluding with, and pressuring the private actors to do their bidding so that they can say, oh, it's not us doing it, it's Facebook doing it, it's Google doing it, it's Twitter doing it. And like you said, when Jen Psaki and Joe Biden were putting that public pressure on Facebook and saying, Mark Zuckerberg is killing people, I think that was very much being coupled with, private pressure that had probably been mounting for quite some time for him to do something. Suddenly, Mark Zuckerberg doesn't look like the villain we thought he was. He looks like someone who's being threatened with losing everything if he doesn't, knuckle under and do what they say. That's the problem. If you remove that, if you remove things like all of these government agencies, not just in the US, but around the world, that are putting this pressure on these companies, and if you also remove all of the various regulations and licensing and taxes and everything else that are creating these closed markets where big tech can flourish and the smaller competitors can't, then if you remove that and you get government out of it, now you have a true marketplace of ideas. Now if Twitter or Truth Social for that matter, or Facebook or Google or whoever else, if they're doing things that we don't like, we have such a plethora of options available at us that we can go somewhere else. And you don't have government actors in there pressuring them to do it in the first place. Now it truly is private actors making choices, and that's the solution.
Yeah, or we can just buy it. I mean,
or they can just buy it. You can just get the $44 billion together and just scrape your pennies, and then you buy it.
But even speaking to what you said, though, I mean, the government is watching Elon Musk very closely.
Oh, yeah.
And they're already considering, even before the deal went through, they were considering ways to kind of hamper his progress because they knew what he was going to do. And to me, it's like, like you mentioned, the licensing and regulations, like, don't think for a second, and I'm saying this to people watching, don't think for a second that these large companies don't like regulations.
Oh, they write them.
They help to write them.
Their lobbyists write these regulations.
Yep.
I find it hilarious when people go, but without government, who would regulate these big corporations? You mean the regulations that the corporate lobbyists are writing to destroy their smaller competition and create de facto cartels in their space or their industry or sector where only they and the biggest competitors can compete? Why do you think that Walmart and Amazon and all these other companies are pushing for things like minimum wage increases? Because they want to destroy anyone who would even possibly try to move their way up from the bottom and compete against them, which is ironic because almost all these companies started from there. But now that they're there, they want to lock the door behind them, and that's why they do it through regulation. And if that ability for government to regulate their competitors out of business wasn't there, then those companies would have to put their focus, if they wanted to keep their market share and grow their market share, they'd have to focus on providing to you, the consumer. But because that lobbying ability is open, the return on investment to spend millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars bankrolling these politicians' campaigns and getting billions, tens of billions, hundreds of billions of dollars back in market protection, in protectionism, in straight up corporate welfare and everything else, that's way more ROI that they'd ever get than trying to serve you. So as long as that lobbying loop is open, it's going to keep happening. If you want to get money out of politics, get politics out of business.
Yeah, exactly. And then just to make it clear, so just to people who may not understand what we're saying, when there are hefty regulations, fines, fees that you have to pay, that benefits a large business like Walmart because they can afford it. If you're a small business and you're trying to get into that market, or if you're a small social media company, you can't afford to pay all that. And especially if you violate one of them, you'll go out of business. Whereas Walmart or Google will just get a slap on the wrist comparatively. So it is a way for them to solidify their power without actually having to provide more value to you, to us.
Absolutely. Yeah. And by the way, that happens locally just as much. You'll have at the local and state level all of these occupational licensing laws that are in place to protect the businesses who are in the chambers of commerce who bankroll the local, the city council, the state senators, and so forth. These are the people that pass these types of rules and regulations that make it so that, just someone who's, braiding hair or mowing lawns or, has, making tamales or whatever, that if they can't afford the tens or even hundreds of thousands of dollars in compliance costs, then they are either operating illegally or they can't operate. And then they have to take their time and talent and go with someone go and work for someone that already has all that in place. And so for all the people that are upset at, how capitalism allows those that already have to force people to work for them, stop pushing for regulations then, because that's what does that. It's not capitalism, it's corporatism. It is protectionism by crony interests who use politicians to push regulations that put their smaller competitors out of business and force them to work for them.
Exactly. So one thing, so now I'm getting into some questions that were asked on a Twitter thread that I put out. I tagged you in it. So some of my followers have some questions. So not all of these are from me. I'm just telling you.
Why are you a jerk? That's an excellent question.
Yeah, actually. I hate you.
Question. I hate you.
With the question mark, I hate you?
Question mark, I hate you? Yeah, probably. Yeah.
So, but I like this question because this is something that I've always wondered. I mean, people always focus on the federal government and the presidential level and who the libertarians are putting up as a presidential candidate. Yes. And I get all that is important. But to me, if the LP is really going to start making inroads and getting more power, they got to start locally. That's the way I see it. So how can we get more libertarians elected in local elections? And I say this as somebody who in these previous elections, I probably voted more libertarian than Republican, even though most of my stuff, even most of my content focuses more on Republicans than libertarian.
Yeah, absolutely. So the short answer is we need to platform people that are running for local office. And this actually does, and this is now LP talk. And I like to make clear my divisions here because I'm not talking as the person that operates a nonpartisan group that's trying to grow the liberty movement. I'm talking as a partisan libertarian who wants the Libertarian Party to be the predominant party in this country.
Perfect.
If we continue to focus, and I say this as the guy who ran for vice president in the last election, if we continue to focus on the nationwide races, the statewide races, which, by the way, are necessary races because we have to have candidates in those races who score a certain percent for us to even be able to be on the ballot for any race in the first place. So that's why we have to do it. And if we're going to do it, we might as well use it for, some national messaging and stuff like that. Fine, that's good.
Use a
but
platform.
If we continue to put our main focus on those races that we know for almost certain that we're not going to win, then we are the main purveyors of the narrative that libertarians can't win. If I go up to your doorstep to sell a product and I pull out my brochure and the first 20 pages are a bunch of products that you can't afford, that you would never want, and that aren't even available in your region, and you go, well, Spike, I'd love to hear what you have to say, but it looks like I can't even buy any of this stuff. And I go, you son of a bitch. Well, I did that. I'm the one who chose to lead with the thing that isn't going to work. And and the biggest problem that we have, more so than ballot access restrictions, which make things very difficult for us, more so than any of the other things that are in place, the media blackouts or any of that, is the overwhelming majority of voters have a narrative that third-party candidates can't win. Yep. And so even if they agree with us 100%, even if they are dyed in the wool, like, yes, this is everything I believe, I'm not going to vote for you because I'm scared that the lesser evil candidate who works with the worse or evil candidate every day is going to lose to the worse or evil candidate. And if we continue to focus on races that we can't win, we are telling people that we can't win. It's prosaic to even say this stuff, but yet it's what we've been doing for 50 years. We need to make our heroes, people like Kara Schultz, people like I'm forgetting her name in this very moment, but Mayor of Hanford, California. Wow, good.
I'll look it up while you're talking.
Yeah, please do, because we need to focus on people. Jim Turney, who is in Florida. We have won hundreds of races across the country. Right now, there are hundreds of elected libertarians across the country, and they're accomplishing incredible. What?
Glenn Jacobs.
Well, he's technically a Republican, but he's very libertarian. But he's in the GOP. But we have many elected libertarians across the country, hundreds of them. We need to be platforming them. They need to be our main focus. And then that way, if someone goes, well, but you're just a regional party, we can go, no, we are a national party, but this is where we're winning now. And look at how the people are winning when they're in place compared to if Republicans and Democrats are in place there. Kalish Morrow, that's her name. Kalish Morrow, that's her name. We need to be platforming these folks because they're success stories, and some of them have incredibly hard-fought wins, and they've done incredible work for the people in their city, their town, their district, wherever they've won. Once they've actually won, we need to be doing that. And until we do that, we're going to continue being the main people telling everyone we can't win.
So why do you think that the LP isn't already doing that? Or I mean, it's not just a party. I mean, because it's all media that would have to do more to push these people out there. But why do you think that they're not getting out there as much as like a Matt Gaetz, a Dan Crenshaw, AOC, the rest of the gang? Yeah,
so I will say I think that over the last couple of years, and increasingly so, the LP has gotten better at focusing on the local stuff, on the local candidates and local elected officials. That has gotten better over time. The problem is everyone talks, especially on social media, national. You mentioned Matt Gaetz, AOC. These are all federal politicians, right? And that's the problem, is we had a congressman, Justin Amash, who got elected as a Republican, right? He didn't get elected. He never ran as a Libertarian. And so that's the only time we've ever been in Congress. I want to make something clear. The Libertarian Party has never won a federal or statewide race. We have won some state legislative races. And that makes us, by the way, far and away the most successful third party in America. It's not even like we're in a tier by ourselves. You've got the Republicans and Democrats in tier 1, the Libertarian Party in tier 2, and a bunch of regional also-rans that can't even get on all the ballots in tier 3 and tier 4, or whatever you want to call it. We really are the only third party at this point. The other ones we should be calling fourth parties. But we're far and away from we can say we're the third largest political party, which is true in the same way that if you put a minivan and a pickup truck and a Matchbox car next to each other, that Matchbox car is the third largest of those vehicles, right? So we just, because the focus is on national and international stuff, we often talk about those things, which is understandable. But there has to be at least some kind of a split where we also focus on, and this is something that I am doing with You Are the Power, not just specific to the Libertarian Party, but just in general. You are more likely to be affected by tyranny from your city council or your sheriff's department or your police department or your state government than you ever are at the federal level, much less by the UN or the World Bank or something like that. You are much more likely to be affected on a day-to-day basis by decisions that are being made by people that live a few miles away from you and get away with all sorts of crap that you wouldn't even believe because no one's paying attention. And I think that that's what we've been doing with You Are the Power, shining a light on stuff that's happening in people's backyards, getting them outraged about it, and then using it as a call to action to fix it. And in doing that, we change the conversation and we show that we have good solutions, that we can win, and that when we win, they win too.
Awesome. Good. Now, here's another question from one of my followers.
Sure.
Why are libertarians that make it to the national stage mostly crazy?
Oh, I love this question. So,
Yes.
Okay. So, it is true that we certainly have had some screw looses, and I'm probably one of them. But I will remind
You're one of the
everyone-
ones who aren't, though.
Well, I mean, I have my moments, but I will say this. There is a video right now of Donald Trump motorboating Rudy Giuliani dressed in drag. It's Giuliani that's dressed in drag, not Trump.
Right,
but Trump
right.
is motorboating Giuliani. And what people say, if you bring that up to Republicans, they'll go, yes, but look at all the things Republicans are doing. Exactly. That's the problem. I don't believe that libertarians have a disproportionately high number of weirdos. It's that because we don't have people, because we don't have people in these higher elected offices, that's all we are known for. We're known for things we say on the internet and weird stuff that gets people's attention, right? So like people will still talk about that the fact that a guy got up on the stage of the Libertarian National Convention in 2016, this is 6 years ago now,
That's what I'm thinking
danced
about.
around in a thong for like 15 seconds before he was pulled off stage by security. Like people still talk about that. And meanwhile, you think of all the crazy crap. Am I allowed to cuss on this?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, you think about all the crazy shit that's happened among Democrats and Republicans. I mean, think about just the existence of Joe Biden and all the things he has said in that 6 years' time. But it gets overshadowed, or at least put in comparison with all the things that Democrats, all the, whether you like it or not, the electoral wins and accomplishments and defeats and victories and so forth that they've had. Same thing with the Republicans, with the Libertarian Party. All we have is the stuff that got people's attention. And the problem is what got people's attention is weird stuff. The only time that we got national press coverage during our campaign was when Joe Jorgensen was bitten by a bat.
Oh, right. I remember
That's
that.
it. That's it. And meanwhile, it got us a bump in the polls because people were like, oh, there's actually someone running as a libertarian. And it sounded kind of badass that a 63-year-old woman got bitten by a bat and still flew to Pittsburgh for her event, right? Like it was something. But it was something, right?
Yeah.
Like it was something. Whatever you like, whether you wanted to who you support or whatever, it was at least something. And that's the problem, is we get attention when it's something quirky, like, oh, look at those quirky third party types. And that's a problem. It's again why we need to focus on changing the conversation to, hey, look, here are libertarians who have actually won and have actually accomplished things, and people in the areas where they've gotten elected are living better lives as a result. It at least adds something to that. Now we're not just the party of the guy that danced in a thong 6 years ago, and he's not even in the party anymore, hasn't been for years, but we're also the party of all these other things as well. And that's we just got to change the narrative.
Have you considered, and just, be open to this, have you considered sniffing women and children when you're out on the campaign?
That seems to work.
It has worked.
It works. Sniffing and motorboating guys in drag seem to be the thing that speaks to the heart of America. And I'm it's not my shtick, but I think whatever happens between consenting adults is fine. I don't favor the sniffing children because children can't consent to being sniffed. But if it's an adult who's like, okay, I'm being sniffed and I'm okay with that, not my thing, not something I'm going to do. But if someone else wants to take that hit for the team to help bring attention, then, Godspeed to them.
Yeah, it's an idea. It's an idea.
It's definitely an idea.
Yeah. So my friend, Gabby Clark, she asked this question.
Sure.
And to give you more context, she is very much active in the effort to oppose the indoctrination efforts on children in schools and elsewhere, especially when it comes to the trans issue. So
Sure.
she asked, why are so many libertarians so hesitant about addressing the social contagion plaguing our children? Why are they hands off on so many social issues outside of pot, guns, and incarceration?
See, I reject the premise. So I don't think that that's true. I think we approach it differently because we look at the root cause of the problem.
Okay.
The root cause of the problem of the indoctrination we're seeing now is the same root cause of the problem back when we had indoctrination in schools of trying to push a specific religion's values over others. And that root cause is government being involved in education in the first damn place. So where others will say, we have to fight to take back the local government school board so that we're the ones deciding what all the children are learning. Instead, we're saying, no. We need to stop that. If there are parents who want their children to be taught CRT and trans inclusive or whatever else, then okay, then they can send their children to schools where they learn that stuff. And if everyone else wants their children to be taught something else, and it's more than likely it's not just going to be this versus this, it's going to be many different things. Children or parents should be deciding what their children are learning, whether it's at home as being homeschooled where they can afford to do so because they aren't being taxed thousands of dollars to pay for a terrible education system, or whether it's their money when their children going to a school system that they've chosen. That's what we focus on. So instead of getting involved in this culture war, which is really just a divide and conquer by Republicans and Democrat power centers to keep people fighting over hobby horse issues so that they can continue to rob us all blind, work together to do that. Instead, we go, no, we're not doing culture war. Here's what we're doing. Get government out of this so we can make choices for ourselves. And hey, let's look at them and see what they're doing working together every day. Isn't it very convenient that they have us fighting over this kind of stuff while they continue to push the national deficit, national debt to higher levels every day, continue to hand off trillions of dollars in corporate welfare to the cronies who put both of their parties in office, continue to vote to enslave future generations that haven't even been born yet to debt that they had no ability to sign off on or even have a say in, talk about taxation without representation, and continue to just rob us blind on every single front. So that's what it is. It's not a hesitance to talk about social issues. It's a hesitance to fall into a trap that isn't serving anyone.
So let me ask you this, and this might sound like a little bit of pushback, but in general, I agree. I mean, if we get to a place to where this is where the government is out of education as much as possible, that'd be great. But that ain't happening tomorrow, right? I mean, that's going to take some time.
Yeah, so that's not happening tomorrow. But school choice, which is a step down, is happening.
Step towards that, yeah.
It's a step towards that. And I want to be clear, it's still, school choice is not the answer. And in fact, if school choice were implemented and we go, our work here is done, it's going to end up being worse because now the main client of private schools is the government. So it's not a solution, but it's a step down. Right. It gets parents in tune with the idea. Well, it does two things. One, it breaks up the teachers' unions, at least for now. They could definitely reconfigure around that new system if you give them time to. But at least for now, it breaks up the government monopoly and the teachers' union monopoly. But it also, probably every bit as importantly, probably more importantly long term, it gets parents behind this idea that it's not, you don't send your children to government school daycare and then shocked that they come back acting like something that you don't even identify with. It's, you are in charge of your children's education. You decide what school your children go to. You want better for your children, so you are an active stakeholder in this. That alone is more than worth the step down, and that is happening now. So if I've got a limited amount of time and political capital, and I can either fight against the evils of CRT, or I can fight to allow parents to send their children to whatever school they're going to, if I've got to make that choice, I'm all in on the school choice. I'm all in on the educational freedom. And by being all in on that, and by not falling into the CRT versus anti-CRT argument or whatever, I can actually build a bigger bipartisan coalition. Because let's all remember that school choice is popular on all political aisles.
Yes, it
It's
is.
even among Democrats, it's a slight majority favors it, or a slight plurality favors it. So by not getting into something that they're going to disagree with me on, like CRT or trans or LGBT or whatever, and saying, listen, whatever you want, we just need to be allowed to allow parents to decide which school their children's going to. We can actually get somewhere on this, and then work eventually, be that much closer to just getting government out of it entirely, ending the federal Department of Education, and then eventually ending state departments of education and letting it be decided locally.
Yeah. God, that sounds so good. I mean, but and that's kind of how I tackle it, because I get involved in these fights too, because it's part of what my job is, what I do. So I do call out the stuff that I don't like, but where it always goes to is, well, what's the solution? Well, school choice is a part of the solution. It's not the end all be all. I probably should be better about making sure my readers know that, but at least we know that that's part of the process. So
it's our best step right now.
Yep. It is. Okay, so next question. and this one is probably, it didn't come from me, but it's probably my fault because I make jokes about this all the time.
Okay.
Do you denounce white supremacy?
Yes, it's every morning when I wake up, the first thing I do, even before I look at what time it is, or use the bathroom, or get drink my first cup, first thing is I look to the sky. We have a skylight. I look to the sky and I say, "Hey, white supremacy, I got a sandwich for you, a knuckle sandwich." And I know in that moment that I have done everything I can to defeat that.
I feel so much less oppressed as a black man just by hearing you say that.
But only by me.
Right.
Yeah.
Because once we're done with this interview,
I didn't absolve anyone else.
Yeah.
I didn't absolve anyone else of their white privilege.
You didn't absolve them, but you are expected in this moment in time to speak for all white people. So,
well, yes. Yeah. No, I can't help other white people. I can only speak on their behalf.
Yes.
And on behalf of all white people, obviously, the most effective thing that we can do is something that accomplishes nothing and doesn't help black people, doesn't help anyone. It definitely doesn't help black people. But the powerful thing is that it makes us feel some weird smug sense of self-satisfaction that then allows us, that when we see black people at various places around town, we can sit back and go, I know that I am doing as little as I can to latently suppress this person. And that's the real victory.
Well, yeah, I mean, why work on solving the problem when you can just make people feel good? Isn't that what matters anyway? I mean,
especially when it's me. Yeah. It doesn't even make you feel better, but it makes me feel better. Right. And that's the real anti-racism.
But you know what makes me feel better? If I were a black progressive, passing a hate crime law that is specifically for anti-black racism, which is what they're pushing for. When they get that passed, then I will feel much better.
Yes, I think that it should be.
It won't save a single black life, but
no, it won't save anyone. And I think that far more important than things like ending occupational licensing that wildly disproportionately affects poor people and people of color, far more than ending qualified immunity so that out-of-control agents of government can't just murder people, which also wildly disproportionately affects people of color, ending the war on drugs and the war on guns, both of which are if you believe in such a thing as systemic racism, those are examples of it, and if you don't, those are just examples of really bad policy. More so than any of those things, I would like to criminalize hurty words, because that's what's been holding you back. And I can tell, looking at you as a fully self-actualized white person, I can tell that you are oppressed in a way that makes me, again, feel better about myself, which is really what this is all about.
That was great. I can't wait for people to see that. Talk to me, when you were talking, I may got some other questions, and if I can get to them, great, but I got the main ones. But
Sure.
Can you tell me a little bit about this Mises Caucus thing? Because a lot of people are talking about it, and I've listened to some podcasts, I've heard some things. I met Mike Heiss at the Solutionary Summit, where I met you in person, actually.
Yes, yes, and where I made that meme.
Yes. Exactly. Yes. As Olivia Rondeau's father.
Yes, as Olivia Rondeau's father. Yeah.
Tell me about what's going on there.
So the long story short, because we could go into this like hour plus long rabbit hole, or I could say what actually matters, which is that this is a tale as old as time, which is there's this sort of argument between various factions in the LP, one who tends to focus more on being pragmatic and relatable and electable, whatever that means to them, and then this other side that they call themselves the for lack of a better word, the radicals. They focus on being true to our philosophy and bold in the way we present things. And it's always been, one side's done better than the other. And usually it's the way all duopolies work. When this side's in charge and doesn't do much, then this side goes, well, try me this time. And then when this side's in charge and they don't do much, then it goes back and forth. And it's basically a duopoly within our party. The Mises Caucus is on more of the radical side of, they're the newest iteration of that radical faction. And I want to be very clear on something. Whether you support the Mises Caucus, whether you don't support the Mises Caucus happened because the party wasn't accomplishing goals that people wanted it to accomplish. And the Mises Caucus did something that hasn't been done in quite some time. They actually had a ground game for state by state organizing to get the delegates in place to take the party over, because our party, it uses the old school caucusing delegate system that the Republicans and Democrats used to use. And so you really only have to assemble a few hundred people across the country, 1,000 or so people across the country to take the party over. And that's exactly what they did. I think that they only truly took over back in late May or early June. And I think it's way too soon. We've got people saying the Mises Caucus has taken over and the party's the best it's ever been. And we have people saying that they took over and it's the worst it's been. I would say that there have been things I've liked, things I haven't liked, but I also think it's way too early for us to know, truly pan out whether the Mises takeover has been a success or a failure. And I say this, by the way, I'm not an uninterested party. I joined the Mises Caucus the day after it was founded in 2017. I'm one of the OGs in the caucus. But I will say, it remains to be seen. I will say, I think that there are some very good people that are in the Libertarian National Committee. The Mises Caucus basically took over from stem to stern. So if they succeed, then they own it. If they fail, they own it, and we'll see what happens.
Right. And I know a lot of the issue was a lot of it was a repudiation against against some of the woke stuff that was seeming to happen in the LP. I know Jorgensen got in trouble for that, but not just her, other people too. I know there were issues with Sarwalk. I don't know what all of them were, but honestly, I'll tell you, it kind of surprised me that there was a lot of wokeness going on the libertarian side, because I hadn't seen that before, or was there a lot, or was it exaggerated, or maybe you can.
So this is the thing with the Libertarian Party, because we're a very live and let live, you do you, I do me, and I don't try to enforce my ideas on you. Our personal thoughts about issues, especially social issues, spans the entire spectrum of thought. So on something like, sexual identity and gender identity, we've got everything from like hardcore, a man and a woman, and only a man and a woman are a marriage, and anything else isn't really marriage. Mm-hmm. But I don't care what other people do with their bodies, and that's none of my business. I just know what I think about it. To people who are, actively in pansexual polycule thruples or whatever, but they don't care if other people disagree with it, and they're fine with that. So we span a very wide spectrum of idea on everything. And by the way, that's also why we're always arguing with each other, is because we are in disagreement over those things.
You have a lot of intellectual diversity over there. The conservative movement boasts about having intellectual diversity. They don't really have it.
We're on a different level. We've got it to the point to where it actually causes some kind of weird form of analysis paralysis in the party. And we can get into all that, but the bottom line is, yeah, there are a lot of people in the party who are very, very, very socially progressive, and there are a lot of people in the party who are very, very, very socially conservative. Most of us are somewhere in between. I tend to consider myself more on the conservative side, but again, I don't care what if consenting adults are doing stuff. Even if I look at it and go, that's different. It's not my body. It's not my life. It's not affecting me as long as they're not trying to force me to, engage in it or force me to say that it's a good thing or accept it or whatever else. I don't care what other people do. If they're consenting adults, that doesn't bother me.
Okay, that makes a little bit more sense, and that's kind of what I saw. I mean, because on the libertarian side, I know you guys have the issue with the no true Scotsman thing, where you're not a real libertarian. No, you're not a real libertarian. Your mom is not a real libertarian. Yeah. But really, you guys have a lot of different ideas. Here's one thing this is just for myself. With the Mises Caucus in charge, what is the Mises Caucus's stance on the border, on immigration?
That's a perfect example. So even within the Mises Caucus.
Oh, come on!
No, even within just that faction, there is everything from people like me who want to go back to what the founders originally intended, which is if you want to become a citizen, here's what you have to do. Otherwise, we don't even care if you're here in the government. It's none of the government's business who comes here. All the way to people who believe that until we've eliminated every other aspect of government and all of its power over us, that we shouldn't be letting anyone in the country. And every single thing in between, just people that are like, well, maybe we can streamline it, or people saying maybe it should be a little more strict. Even within just that faction, there's that much diversity of thought on an issue like immigration. Now, again, our issue, that's where the arguments tend to happen, because it's not an issue where you can say, well, but whatever your thought is doesn't affect me, because it technically does. That's an actual policy disagreement. Yep. But that's how libertarians are. Libertarians understand that we do best when we're most free, and we all operate from the idea of the non-aggression principle and the idea of individual autonomy. But then how we interpret that idea to various policies can vary very wildly on certain issues, and immigration is one of them. Abortion's another one.
That's what I'm going to ask you about next.
Yeah, so we can go ahead and go into that. The abortion question very often comes down to, where do you think personhood begins? If you think it begins at some point before birth, or let's say if you believe it begins at conception, well, then not only is abortion a violation of the non-aggression principle, but so are things like in vitro fertilization. If you think that it begins only at birth, or when the parents decide it does, well, then you should be able to have abortion all the way up to the very moment of conception. And if you're like most people who think it falls somewhere in between or don't know, then you might be a little more nuanced on it. My take is that it falls far closer to conception than anyone on the pro-choice side is willing to admit. But from a consequentialist standpoint, I've seen what the war on drugs has brought us. I've seen what the war on guns has brought us. I've seen what the war on poverty has brought us. I've seen what the war on terror has brought us. I do not want a war on abortion. Government can only serve to make that problem worse. That's my take on it.
So you favor, because this is actually an argument on the conservative side too. How much should we be relying on the government to deal with the abortion issue, and how much should we be relying more on the cultural aspect, persuasion?
It's got to be the cultural aspect. It's got, even if you think that there should be some restrictions or measures in place, whatever you think is a common sense measure, it has to be done you have to work with people that are considering having abortions, and you have to work on a cultural level. To try to expect the government to ramrod a restriction and somehow end it, it's not going to happen. What's going to happen is it's going to create a black market for abortions, and because you're not making the demand go away, you're just criminalizing the supply of it. Mm-hmm. So now it's going to be that much more dangerous. You've given the cartels yet another thing they can make money off of. Congratulations. And you've also given the progressives what they love, which is a new excuse to regulate things. Here come pregnancy licenses. Here come all sorts of required inspections. Here come things like every miscarriage having to be investigated as a potential homicide, because otherwise the doctors can just call it a miscarriage instead of an abortion, right? All of these things come. I think it was Thomas Sowell who said there is no such thing as a solution. There's only trade-offs. The trade-offs for this is that you end up creating so much more regulation. And what happened? We were talking about regulations before. What do regulations cause? A barrier to entry. You are inevitably going to have a situation where, thanks to the regulatory regimes that have been triggered by these restrictions and regulations, that poor women who get pregnant who would have otherwise had the child are now facing getting an abortion because it's way easier to hide an illegal abortion than an illegal pregnancy and an illegal birth. And you want to talk about weaponizing CPS? Tell them that they can seize any child that was born illegally. There are a lot of bad things that happen when you make government the enforcer of right and wrong. And this is a perfect example of that. Whatever you support on abortion, focus on the cultural aspect.
And for those who think that the idea that CPS could, get involved with a child who's born illegally is a crazy dystopian idea, I'll tell you right now, in Maine, there are lawmakers who want to be able to use CPS against parents who don't affirm their child's gender identity. They're already doing this in Canada, so it can happen if we allow
easily.
it. This is not just like a fake slippery slope. This is something that could happen.
Go back in time, and even 50 years, much less 100 or 200 years. Go back in time 50 years and tell people all the stuff they could do in that moment that don't require any kind of licensing or regulation, that are now licensed and regulated. And then tell them the types of things that they can do right now that are considered perfectly normal, that would have their children seized and have them thrown in jail and facing trial. Now go forward in time 20 or 50 years and tell them all the stuff you can do now without a license. And every single one of those things, they'll say, my God, that's unsafe. What do you mean an unregulated pregnancy? An unlicensed black market pregnancy? My God, what do you want to happen to the child? No. The government needs to take that child and give them to a responsible licensed family. Like, you can hear this, right? Like this is just the next step. And all of that starts with the idea that we should be deciding what's happening at pregnancy. And I find abortion to be one of the most gruesome things I can think of. I don't want more of them. In the same way I don't want more, I want to end the war on drugs. And I say that as a recovering addict that's been sober for 16 years and that has seen firsthand the consequences of people overdosing, the consequences of cartels, all of that. The war on drugs makes that worse. I believe a war on abortion would make abortion worse and everything related to it and create even more problems along the way.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I just feel like I just scratched the iceberg, but I know you have some place else to be. So we have to do this again because I have a lot more questions.
We'll do it again. We'll have to do it again.
Awesome. But before we sign off, why don't you let everybody know where they can find you?
Absolutely. I am easy to find. I'm all over social media. You just look for Spike Cohen. My website is spikecohen.com. That shows any of my upcoming events I'm going to be going to. I'd love for people to find out more about You Are the Power. We are working to grow the liberty movement by reaching people where they are, helping people who are being harmed and abused and neglected by their local governments, helping them to organize to win and to fight back and get justice and accountability, and using it as an opening conversation about how the real root problem of it is that there's too much power in the hands of too few people, and that the solution is to take the power out of their hands and put it back in the hands of the people where it always belonged. And if you'd like to be a part of that, I invite you to go to youarethepower.net. Membership is free. We would love to have you be a part of it. And we definitely have to do this again. I appreciate coming on, Jeff.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much. And I hope we can do this again soon.
Absolutely, man.